Guys, I know it's been a minute. So the topic of today's video, we're going to be discussing Jon Jones and his feud with the UFC right now. And basically, we're going to be talking about how Jon's trying to get paid. He's trying to get compensated, justly so, for his potentially upcoming fight with either Stipe Miocic or probably Francis Ngannou. We're going to be going over his latest tweets, where his frustrations with the organization, and we're going to be talking about the trend that the organization has been going through for the past couple months now, past like year, and some change. Well, basically, it's always been a problem, but we're really going to talk about how it's been intensified right now due to all the stars talking about it and all the attention that it's been getting in recent history. We're going to be talking about why Jon getting paid means so much. We're going to be talking about how it's going to set the standard for the rest of the athletes in the sport going forward, and we're really going to talk about why I feel like, and why, like, a lot of people are talking about why Dana White is really sticking to his guns in regard to not paying Jon Jones, and really what it means for the sport as a whole, what it means for upcoming fighters, for fighters right now. And we're really talking just about like the nitty gritty, the details. We're gonna be dotting our I's, crossing our T's, regarding everything about this topic. So stay tuned. Grab a cup of coffee, grab a little snack or whatever. Sit down, listen, and comment down below what you think about this whole situation. And do not forget to like and comment and share the video, because I want to get a plethora of opinions on this topic. So once again, like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you already have not done so. This is going to be the best MMA content, the best MMA discussions on YouTube, so stay tuned. Alright guys, to kick it off, basically the first bullet point that I'm going to really hit on is talking about how Jon is basically the undisputed GOAT of MMA, in my opinion, and in the eyes of the majority. Now, though you guys could talk about a picogram and we could go on about the GOAT debate, for hours, Jon is commonly referred to as the undisputed GOAT of the sport, right? And as thus so, if he can't be paid, Dana White will use that as a line to underpay his other fighters, because Luke Rockhold had actually just come forward and he had made a statement talking about Dana White, and he basically was talking about how Dana White likes to shit on the fighters, and he was talking about how when he lost his belt, how Dana White basically tried to come in and break him down mentally. And to quote him, he says it's like a mafia. He says like a mafia so type of vibe that Dana tries to bring to the fighters, in terms of, like, he said, if you don't know your worth, he will tell you your worth, and his version of your worth will be less than what it truly is. And we know that because other fighters in the past have come forward and have said that, and Dana White is known as like a shark when it comes to dealing in business and everything. And of course, that's a good thing when it comes to, expanding the business and making money and doing this, doing that, getting Fight Island, expanding the sport. But when it comes to the treatment of the fighters and their compensation, we know how vastly underpaid they are. We have fighters that work literally a second day job just to maintain their career. We have fighters who aren't able to afford their medical expenses and stuff like that. We have fighters who get life-altering injuries and aren't justly compensated for that. And Dana White likes to use lines, and he likes to bring up other fighters' situations when other fighters talk about, possibly getting a pay raise, why they think they deserve a big contract, this, that, third. And I feel like if Jon were to give in, it would give Dana White the biggest leverage he could ever ask for, because he has openly said multiple times, and he said it as recent as last week when he was talking about Jon Jones. He said that he thinks Jon Jones is, like I said, the undisputed GOAT of the entire sport and the history of the sport, most talented, most accoladed individual in the history of the sport. So if Jon can't get paid and he won't pay Jon, he can always be like, well, shit, if Jon didn't get paid, if Jon was getting paid this, that, and the third, what makes you, and he's done this, that, and that, and he's undisputed GOAT, what makes you think that, you can get paid that, or you can even ask for a fraction of that? You know what I'm saying? So I feel like he's trying to use Jon, and he's trying to use Jon as a new bar for the standard. He's trying to use Jon Jones to set the new bar of the standard, especially as the sport is starting to explode in popularity and it's starting to get all these new eyes and stuff like that. So it's very important in Dana's perspective to set the bar of compensation and to set the bar in terms of like what leverage, as much leverage as fighters can get in terms of using it on the company. Because not everyone's gonna have the type of leverage that Conor McGregor has, and he knows that, obviously, but he doesn't want fighters to have more leverage than he is comfortable with. And I feel like if Jon Jones has been extremely public with his feud, so in Dana's perspective, him giving in to Jon would probably just be like, oh, to telling other fighters, well, hey, if you go on Twitter, if you do interviews this and the third, you'll get what you want. So he's not really trying to have that. It's sort of like I don't want to say a parent and a child going at it. It's more so it's just like a very transparent business meeting. Like, imagine if Steve Jobs and Apple were just having like a giant conference meeting for the world to see. Like, that's sort of how I'm looking at it right now. Because if John does lose and he does give in to a vastly undervalued number, Daniel will definitely use that to justify underpaying other fighters, because he will definitely say, well, Jon Jones got paid this, Jon Jones got paid that, because, and we know that for a fact because in the arguments with Jon Jones right now, you know who Dana White talks about? Dana White brings up Conor McGregor. He brings up Ronda Rousey. He brings up Amanda Nunes. He brings up all these other all-time great fighters who get paid either more or less than him, and he brings up their accolades. And he says, well, if these great fighters get paid this, that, and the third, and they do this, that, and the third, well, then why are you asking for A, B, and C? You get what I'm saying? And obviously we know John isn't the draw that Conor is. However, with a mega fight like the Francis Ngannou, it could, especially if they set up the rest of the card right, it could easily be the biggest fight of all time, and it could easily be the best fight of all time. So, and just off of the status alone, the majority, 90% of the MMA community does feel like Jon Jones can get paid. Like, if you had the undisputed GOAT, pay him his worth. You know what I'm saying? Like, GSP, in his heyday, was getting $5-6 million a fight, right? Which is very good. But GSP didn't fight Francis Ngannou. He was fighting Dan Hardy's, Michael Bisping's, Nick Diaz's. You feel me? So it's totally different when you have someone like Jon Jones fighting a Francis Ngannou, especially off of the big media tour that Francis is going off of right now. It could be huge. The numbers could be astounding. But more so, to go to my second point, fighters are already vastly underpaid, from the Reebok deal to the Venum deal. We already know how fighters are like done super dirty. They're not even really allowed to have their own sponsorships like that unless the sponsors are like super rich. You know, Izzy and his BMW sponsor that he actually just lost for having an exchange with Kevin Holland, but that's a totally different topic for another different video. But yeah, unless a sponsor is already like super rich and they can afford the fee slash tariff that the UFC puts on their on possible sponsors, so fighters are not really allowed to have any real sponsorships. That's why you see in the majority of these fighters, they have Gorilla Wear as a sponsor. They have Monster Energy. They have Rider Wear. They have Bang. They have these super big corporations. You don't really see any like small companies that are fighters are sponsored by, unlike, you know, Bellator and One, where the fighters are able, you know, they get compensated better and they get paid more because they can get more sponsorships. And to go on my third tangent, that it's already a terrible look for the UFC. The third reason why I feel like, you know, they should pay Jon Jones is that I think it's a terrible look for the UFC when you have the biggest stars in the history of the sport all talking about the same thing. You feel me? Like Jorge Masvidal, even though he's starting to become extremely unpopular, back when he was popular in his first fight, Usman, what was the major thing talking about it right now? He said, I'll take the fight if you pay me. So Jorge Masvidal was talking about it. Dustin Poirier is talking about it. It's such a big thing that Dustin Poirier turned down the title fight to get the second Conor McGregor trilogy. Like, it's that big of a deal. Imagine when you're the best fighters in your roster saying, no, I don't want to fight for the belt because you're not going to pay me. I want to fight Conor because I know that's guaranteed money, because, remember, because he's already a former champion, he already gets pay-per-view points, pay-per-view buy percentages. So Dustin's going to be good. The major thing for fighters, I was listening to a Dan Hardy interview, and he was talking about all fighters, once they get a championship belt, no matter what it is, whether it's interim, undisputed, or the BMF now, right, you automatically get pay-per-view points. This is why you see Jorge Masvidal, he just went straight for the Usman fight, because he already has pay-per-view points for being the BMF, so he obviously wants to get more money from the pay-per-view buys from a title fight, right? That's why Dustin Poirier, he already knows his Conor McGregor fight is going to be pay-per-view. That's why he wants to fight Conor, the most pay-per-view points you can get in the history of the sport. Same thing with John. He's going to fight Francis. Francis is a champion. That's already the automatic pay-per-view show. So he wants to get paid too, because the UFC does not really pay fighters that much when it comes to flat-out payments. The majority of how the champions get paid is based off of pay-per-view buys. Hence why Usman really is he's fighting Jorge again instead of someone like Kobe or Wonderboy, because Jorge was obviously the biggest fight number-wise of his career so far. And it's a terrible look for the organization when the biggest stars are all talking about money, when they're all talking about they're being underpaid. And I think there's actually a legal project going underway right now to try to unionize the fighters and galvanize them in order to, get their worth and to really just stop the UFC because they've really just kind of monopolized the sport. So I think it's a sort of like a fighters union trying to take place right now. But yeah, so that's a whole different thing that could be talked about in a whole different video once I get the details for that. But yeah, fighter pay once again is just coming up and it's being a huge issue, and it's honestly a terrible, terrible look for the sport because you have your undisputed GOAT and you're not going to pay him. Like, what does that even say about to the new people that are thinking about getting to the sport? Like, imagine if LeBron James was like, "Yeah, they're not paying me." Da 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 da. Like, not as many people want to play basketball, right? Not as many people would think about trying to make it out because the UFC loses a lot of their light heavyweight, middleweight, and heavyweight contenders and prospects to what sports? NBA, NFL, MLB, the major sports that they know are guaranteed paydays. Once you make it there, it's like, okay, I'm set, my family's set, I'm good. So if the UFC really wants to, expand its potential in terms of athletes and popularity, they need to compensate their fighters better because the more they compensate their fighters, the more people are gonna look at the sport as a potential way to make it out the hood, so to speak, and make it out the trenches, for lack of a better term, and we could get better prospects. So I think all in all, it's a terrible situation for the organization, and they need to pay Jon Jones. Pay that man. They need to pay that man. But anyway, guys, these are my opinions. These are my thoughts on the situation. So let me know down below and comment down below what you think about this situation. And don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the video. I want to hear everybody's opinions on it. And let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think Jon Jones should shut up and get paid? Do you think he shouldn't? Do you think he should, stick to his guns? And do you think he could possibly just end up going to Bellator if the UFC really just fucks him over? So let me know down below what you guys think about the situation, and I'll catch you on the next one.